Hello, and welcome to Friendship, Wellness, and Wisdom with your hosts, Heather and Rachel.
Together, we're here to talk about all things self-care, from fitness to mindfulness and everything in between.
Whether it's yoga, Tai Chi, Pilates, or practices like tapping and meditation, we're here to help you discover new ways to care for yourself.
We'll also share tips on positive self-talk, finding time for self-care, and creating routines that stick.
We're here to provide you with plenty of tips, tricks, and unsolicited life advice.
Remember to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications. Join our community, and together we can explore the path to wellness.
Hello. Welcome to today's episode of Friendship, Wellness, and Wisdom. I'm Rachel, and I am here with Heather Rogers, and today we're going to explore a topic that's really close to both of our hearts. All right, so we're talking about the journey of awakening human consciousness, right? We'll be a deep dive into breaking free from societal constructs that shape us and embracing our higher state of collective evolution. So in this episode, we are going to touch on topics like shifting from ego-driven existence to liberation, how yoga and mindfulness can contribute to this shift, and what an awakened society might look like. And I'm like, that's kind of hard to imagine a little bit. Like you get those nice little collective groups where you get a glimpse of it every once in a while. Like hopefully if you're lucky, like, you know a group of people that like really kind of make you feel that way.
Mm-hmm.
But I know for me, it doesn't always happen all that often. I feel like so much time on social media and it's like, these guys are terrible. You should hate them because they did this. Oh yeah, well, those guys are more terrible because they did this. And I'm like, so it's kind of, every time you get that like, oh yes, enlightened society is so great. And then it's just like mudslinging left and right.
So I'm on a track of writing these blogs of just higher consciousness and how do we evolve into just a better society, even though we all have different ideas of what society should look like and things like that. But how can we all coexist and really rise above all the noise and the nonsense, right?
Mm-hmm.
And become very conducive. And how do we all navigate together and still respect each other? So,
yeah, I think that's a part of the biggest thing too, is just starting with that respect, like knowing that we're all different and it's okay to have those differences as long as we come at everything from a place of just love.
Yeah.
And that seems a little simple, but right. So not even just love, it's just not being threatened by someone who doesn't think like you do.
Well,
and just accepting that they can think that and they can have their opinions and you can coexist without conflict.
Yeah, well, and it's all, we've talked about it in another episode that I have a blog for as well, like leading with joy and not fear, right? Making those decisions in that manner. So,
all right. So in your blog, you talk about societal constructs that shape us. All right. So can you explain what you mean by these constructs and how do they affect you on your journey?
Yeah. So I think we all feel this, right? We, especially here in America, growing up in a Western world, right? We are molded to think that our social expectation is success, productivity, and conformity, right? That's what we're taught. Like we have this program going on, right? Sitting in a classroom and, going out and getting a job, going to college, whatever you're raised with, right? So I was taught to prioritize external achievements, right, over internal fulfillment. And we all were. There's very few of us that were blessed enough to learn at a very young age that happiness comes from within, right? And that we didn't have to follow this, whatever you want to call it, but I'm going to call it, for lack of a better term, the American dream. Right. And so my journey towards awakeness, and believe me, I don't think that I'm awakened or more enlightened than anybody else. I just think I'm on the journey of it, right? And I just think I'm on a journey of trying to figure it out. And so my journey towards this evolution for myself just has to do with, me finding my true self and me
Hmm.
finding like what drives me from within, right?
Okay.
And breaks me free from just the what society expects of me.
Yeah. No, I feel like that's something like so many of us struggle with. I mean, I know I get very hung up at times with I'm not in the place in life where I should be, right? Like I expected for life to be very, very different
Hmm.
at this like time and place in my life. And I'm spending a lot of time being like, okay, but I'm okay where I am.
Right.
And, you know, would I be happier if I was here? Like just because I was expecting to be here, like what would that really change? What does that look like? And am I a happier person for it? Because I feel like now more than anything else, what I really want to be is number one, like okay with myself, like really just being okay with who I am, like
Hmm.
as a person, how I treat other people.
Right.
And I want to be happy. And I want to like teach my kids to be happy. Like you don't have
Yeah.
to hit, like if you don't want XYZ, you don't have to go after those things.
Right.
And it's hard to break away from that, I think, and to even notice what it is that you do want because we're just bombarded, like so bombarded with um what we should be doing and like where we should be at on this journey. So
Yeah.
um yeah, I just, and I feel like we're gonna hit like so many of that. I think that's a great conversation to start because I think so many of us feel like this and it's just not always a conversation
Hmm.
that people have because it's not an easy subject to kind of bring up. Uh,
And I also don't think people even realize that they have a choice to not follow somebody else's expectations. I
right.
don't think people realize that. And I think it's a hard place to get to because you have so much outside chatter
Right.
of the expectation, whether it be parents, whether it be friends, whether it be spouses, whether it be whatever. And you
Right.
just have all this outside chatter, and it's hard to really listen to yourself when all the external keeps going.
Well, I mean, that's like like kind of the side effect of society, right? So if we're going to live in a society, there are rules that kind of need to be followed to keep
Yeah.
order. Otherwise, there's chaos. And the same thing happens within families.
Hmm. Yeah.
You decide how you're going to have your family, you set up rules. And I mean, honestly, like, and I've done it, you've done it, we've all done it. We condition our children to behave in a way that keeps them kind of safe as an operating member of society. They
Hmm.
have to go, they go to
Yeah.
school, they do these things, and we all need to understand that there will be certain expectations, and it's hard to like pull away from the fact that that doesn't have to define you
Yeah.
and
Well,
and who you are, or those aren't exactly the things that you need to make yourself happy.
yeah. And
Um,
expectations, like when we look at expectations, expectations is different than measuring success or something of that sort. So
yeah,
we'll get into all that.
yeah. All right, I'm gonna stop now because I'm getting a little existential and getting off topic. So we're going to talk about like some of the books, and I'm going to let you kind of take this over without fully like asking this question because you had mentioned when we talked, you had mentioned a few books, and then you're like, oh, I only want to mention these books. So
Right, right,
the
right.
books that you kind of used and brought up like while writing this blog, I guess let us know what those books are and why they were kind of important to what you were
Yeah.
writing about.
So one of the books that I read early on in this journey for myself was The Alchemist, which is a great story because he is a shepherd and he changes his life. He comes across some things. He has to sell his sheep, and he changes his life completely as he goes through this, and he goes from being a sheep herder to an alchemist. So it's a really good story to follow through, but The second book that I read was The Four Agreements. And The Four Agreements is really good because it kind of helps you understand something so simple, right? So simple in just governing yourself. The Four Agreements are uh, be impeccable in your word, right? Your word is your bond. Don't take things personally. Make don't make assumptions
Mhm.
and always do your best. Super simple 4 agreements that you have with yourself, and super simple. Really good book. It's a series of books. I suggest anybody to read them. They're really wonderful. And then I think the one that I recently, have read and I constantly come back to is, the Well-Lived Life. And this was written by, a woman that's like 103 years old. Her family traveled with Gandhi, and she talks about the 5 L's of life, right? It's, listening, labor, learning, love, and laughter. And all of these things cannot be sustainable without love in front of them. Right? So, listening without love, you're not really giving the person the time, and you're really not listening with your whole intent of listening. Learning without love, when you don't love with your learning, you're dreading learning these things, or labor without love is the same thing. And so she talks about how leading with love really does change everything in your world. And very good books, and they're just a good compass to
Mhm.
jump off, and really kind of it changes the way you look at things, right? We all need that. We all need something to kind of like help us shake up our perspective maybe a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's definitely huge. For all of us. I think we get really stuck in our view of
Mhm.
life
Yeah.
and the world, and it gets really narrow, I think, at times. So when you find something that really kind of helps shift your perspective and makes you look at things in a different way, it really kind of changes then, even what you're looking at.
Yeah,
Um,
totally.
so I think that was like a Wayne Dyer quote. It's like when you change like the way you look at things, the things you
Mhm.
look at change.
Yeah.
It's like something kind of like to that respect. And I've been really doing like a lot of work myself lately, just kind of trying to shift my perspective on things. I get very stuck
Mhm.
in like certain ways of thinking, especially about like myself and my life and again, like where I think I should be. And when you kind of look at it from a different perspective, it really does change things a lot. Um and it's just fascinating to kind of come up with like these different viewpoints and challenge yourself and your thinking
Yeah.
and your point of view.
Yeah.
Um,
Totally.
so yeah. All right.
And
So
know that our brains are pliable.
yeah,
We
that's
can change at any
all
time.
that great like neuroplasticity.
Yeah.
Like we feel like we're really stuck and we've again, like other things that we've reached, we feel like we're really stuck. It's like who we are. It's just how we are. And no, it's actually just repeated habits, like
Mhm.
over and over and over again. And it does become difficult to break because your brain loves those habits. It loves those like life hacks.
Mhm.
But you can like kind of reverse that conditioning
Yeah.
and put in new habits. And it doesn't matter how old you are, which I find like fascinating. Like even now, like I've, been trying to just kind of undo some old programming and
Mhm.
and put some new stuff in there. And when you see it kind of take hold and like get put into practice, it's pretty amazing, like
Right.
how pliable our brains really are. And it's pretty amazing, like what we can do and how much we can change, like even as we get older. So
Yeah. Totally.
a lot of fun.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to talk about yoga because I know how you love to talk about yoga, and I
I
know that's been like one of your always like it always comes up. That is like one of your like your pivotal points in life. Like that was the one
yeah.
thing I think for you that made like the biggest change and the biggest impact. like spiritually, physically, all of those things. So how does yoga, what's its part in all of this for you?
Yeah. So intentionally, I've said this on a different podcast that when I first started yoga, it was just a physical practice, right? It was for me to get connected with my body and everything. But now yoga is a way of life. Like I follow the 8 limbs of yoga. And so it really is I live by the yoga philosophy, the yamas, the niyamas, and things like that. And so I teach that, I coach that, and so yoga philosophy is really like it's just mindfulness, right? Um, it's really allowing this to be ingrained in your everyday life. It's not just my movement on the mat, right? I always say, and a lot of teachers always say, how you do your yoga is how you do your life, right? And I think that's with anything. Like you can look at an artist, how they create art is how they live life.
Hmm.
When you're passionate about something, that is how you do everything, right? And so we do hard things on the mat, like we put our body into stressful places and stressful postures, so our brain can be pliable out in the world when we're put in stressful situations, right? And so it really has just changed my perspective. It has allowed me to step back and breathe and be present and be aware in everything that I'm doing. So it
Okay.
really is, it's my compass.
Right. So I feel like too, like when you talk about doing hard things on the mat, like you put yourself into these positions and you're holding these postures that can be difficult. And the great thing about that is your mind and your body are like, they might fight you a little bit out at first, but at some point, everything does decide to click and to find that like comfort
Yeah.
and that sweet spot and adjust and make it work. And I think like that's a really great way to like kind of
Well,
carry that into the other aspects of your life, right?
but even with that, if you never find that sweet spot and you can still breathe through it,
Right. Okay.
right? And you can be in the mindset that I'm breathing through this and it's temporary.
Right. Yeah.
Like when you think about things, nothing lasts forever, whether it's good or bad, nothing lasts forever. And
Right. And if you
so,
can get through all that temporary stuff without kind of breaking down, like
right.
then you know that you can get to the next thing.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I think
Okay.
that's an important mindset. Like nothing, whether you're in the best time of your life, that doesn't last forever. If you're in the worst time of your life, that doesn't last forever. And so,
And
knowing
sadly,
that,
dessert doesn't last forever.
no, which is
It's not
probably
fair.
a portion of the best part of your life.
So there I
So,
go thinking about chocolate again.
dang it. All
All
right.
right. So now we are going to, all right, kind of ask like the big question is here, what does it mean to awaken? Right. So in the context of like human consciousness, right? Is this a
Yeah.
process? Is it an event? Is it like, and I feel like, I mean, obviously, it's like very obvious. Like, clearly, it's a process. It's a journey. Like you already said, it's a
Yes.
journey.
Yes.
There is no end. Like, oh my God, I get this point. Like, I am awakened. Like, I have reached like the pinnacle of human
Yeah.
consciousness. Like,
No.
no,
No.
it's not how that
Um,
works.
yeah, and so, like, the journey is always more important than the destination, right? So the fact of the matter is awakening is definitely a process. It's a shift in consciousness, right? It is a shift beyond social conditioning. So it is changing your brain, changing your being to realize all the stigma of society is other people's thought process, not yours. And so, moving past that, right? Even though you are involved in it because society affects us all, even though we're all involved in it, it is not ours to own. It is not ours um, to absorb. yes, we have to do certain things. We have to speak out when we see things that are wrong. We have to, um, you know, be a part of society. We've already talked about that, right? But there also is some kind of freedom in not owning all the nonsense. I think one of the big things that happens is people get so swirled up in the nonsense that they can't
Mhm.
rise above to change the nonsense.
Right. It's kind of like an attachment sort of an issue, right? So it's
Yeah,
there, it exists, but you don't really need to attach yourself
right,
to it. Like you can kind of like coexist
right.
with it.
Yeah, and that's part of yoga philosophy, non-attachment, right? That's
Mhm.
huge. And so you can still be present in the moment that is uncomfortable. You can still be a change in the world and do things to move forward and progress in the change of the world. You don't have to attach yourself to those stigmas. You don't have
Okay.
to attach yourself to those constructs.
Right. So speaking of which, so right, how do we start questioning all of that? Like all these things that have shaped us, like what do we do? What are our first steps? Like what are the questions we ask? What are the steps that we take?
Well, I think the first questions you ask, like the first thing is just like being a critical thinker, right?
Okay.
Thinking through all the hubbub, right? And actually asking questions that like questioning like things that don't feel right, like things
Okay.
that don't kind of gel with who you are, right?
I've
I
got
always
I've got I'm gonna like just kind of like give you an example because I'm
sure.
like it feels so pertinent. So I know with me, I have caught myself getting angry about things because they always like made me angry, or it was something like my parents got angry about. I just get so upset because I was told like that was not the way it was supposed to happen and it needed to be like this. And I caught myself a couple times going, you know what? I don't even care about this.
Hmm.
Why am I even angry? Like, this frankly doesn't even
Yeah.
matter to me. But I
Yep.
was just so conditioned that that was something that was supposed to be
Yeah.
upsetting. So I got upset. And then I'm like, but I like, so, you take that step back and I saw myself and I went, this doesn't upset me. I honestly, like, I don't even care.
Yeah. A perfect example of all this is holidays,
Oh, God.
right? The expectation on holidays, like what money that needs to be spent and people that need to be invited, or think about like a wedding. Who sits by who and how this is all looking and how it's supposed to be and who we're going to upset. And it's not anybody else's day but the bride and groom, right? And so, like, we do all these things that really are just taking us away from inner peace.
Right.
We do a ton of things for societal expectation that takes us away from really our inner peace. Me and my husband say all the time, though you were at our wedding. Our wedding
Mhm.
was so tiny. Our wedding was so simple. But we talk about it now and we're like, we should have just eloped. Like, why
Yeah, I
did we
know,
even
right?
have
I
a
mean, my
wedding?
wedding got a little nuts. Who wanted this? Who wanted that? And I got to a point where I was like, who was insisting they had this? And I remember I was kind of out of, with money and it was like, oh, well, you can do Chinette and like you can do like disposable tablecloths. And I was like, because we had so many people.
Right.
And I was about to do that. My grandmother's like, you can't do that. And I'm like, well, if I'm paying for it, I can have whatever I want.
Mm,
But if you want china and linen, and if you would like to pay for it, then you
mhm.
can have whatever you want. And
Yeah.
I just came out with that because I was and she was like, okay. And she did because she wanted that. And I was like, okay, well, I would like to make you happy, but I don't have the money for this.
Yeah.
So if this is something that you are insisting upon having, then
Yeah.
feel free to pay for it.
Which
And she did. I was
but
like, "Oh, well, cool."
but this is the society process, right? Think
Yeah,
of this. It I have to make you happy at my wedding.
right. well, I wasn't about to do that. I was like, fine, but if you want this,
But
I don't care. It doesn't bother me. If you
but
want it, grab it.
what I'm
Yeah,
saying is even somebody else
of
saying
course.
they'll pay for it because that's what
That's what
they
they
want
want. Mhm.
at your wedding.
Well, if
We
I mean,
we have a very warped sense
absolutely.
of some things.
Absolutely.
And honestly, this is not a judgment of anybody. This is a judgment of just like a society.
Right, because people don't want to be judged, right?
Right.
And then that's really what it all comes down to. Most of the time, we're afraid of judgment
Mm-hmm.
and rejection. And
Yeah.
because we are such social creatures, I think
Yes.
that what basically like it all comes down to a lot of the things we do because we're afraid of being rejected
Yeah.
and alone.
Yeah. And I think that's why a lot of people follow certain things that are not okay.
Well,
Is
no, because they just
because
want
they
a
don't
place to belong.
right. And they just want to feel wanted.
And when you're taught that these are the right things and that
Mhm.
it's dangerous to be any other way, then fear really then plays into all of that. And you get really locked into those roles for fear that something bad is going to happen if you don't like
Right.
follow like all of these steps that,
Yeah.
somehow like, and I've said I felt like this sometimes, like, yeah, like just because I did this wrong, now like the entire earth is going to implode and like things. And I'm like, when you stop and think about it and you say it out loud, like if you're not crazy, you're going to laugh at that because you're like, okay, there's no way like me making this silly little like side step is going to destroy like society.
Right.
Like, like the earth is not going to blow up because I didn't do this in the
Right.
correct order.
Yeah,
And like
totally.
after a few times of seeing that, it throughout life, you're like, oh, you know what? It's really okay. Like
Yeah.
I'm still okay. Like this happened. All of these things happened, and I'm still okay.
Yeah. And I we'll go on to like the second one, this next question, just because we
Hmm.
just talked about like judgment, right?
Right.
And so like when we are cultivating all this, right? We need to really pay attention to being empathetic
Yeah.
with everything that we do. And I think that is a huge thing that we have gotten away with in society or gotten away from in society
Yeah.
is well, I think people have gotten away with it too, not being
No,
empathetic.
this same. Yes, sadly.
But that is not what I meant. I think that we've gotten away from it. We don't empathize. We don't empathize with the people that feel less than or other people that don't have and things like that. We have gotten so focused as a society on the me, my, I, and we really don't pay attention to empathizing with the people that are close or far to us, right?
Right.
We just kind of when we were kids, you knew all your neighbors knew you, your neighbors knew your kids, and things like that. And granted, are there some neighborhoods still like that? Yes. But I think we have gotten away from really knowing the people that are going through the things,
Right.
right? And we also have gotten away with sharing that we are going through the things.
Hmm.
And so we don't allow people to empathize with us, and then we don't in return empathize with others.
Well, yeah, no, because there's all these things like, "Oh, I'm supposed to be doing this. This is supposed to be happening." We don't talk about this because it's embarrassing or it's messy
Well, and
or
you're
like
afraid of
all of that
judgment.
stuff.
You
Yeah.
know, you're afraid of judgment. And when we can be raw and genuine and just blatant about it, we can all look at each other and be like, you know what? I feel you. I see you. And it's a huge thing in that journey of enlightenment and awakening when you can, number one, be non-attached,
Okay.
yet be empathetic.
Yeah, so you wanna be present and then not attached, which is
Right.
it is a trick and a half because, like, it's like one of those things where one moment you're like, "Oh my god, I got that, and that felt so great," and the next you're like, I got to do this and I got to do the things. And then it kind of goes away. So it's like, I feel like the more you practice that, like getting into that space, the more you can realize you can have it. But that's a tough one. It really,
Yeah.
it is. And I think it really takes some
The
practice.
and I know this is not something that a lot of people talk about, okay? The one way that you can be empathetic but not and with non-attachment, think of it in this manner. If you tell me something and I empathize with you, and then I start to tell you what I think you should do,
Right.
now I'm getting attached to it, right?
Hmm.
In that aspect, and this is all part of yoga philosophy. In that aspect, I'm telling you, I don't have faith in you that you can handle your own stuff.
Right.
I'm telling you, I know better than you. That's not empathy.
Right. No.
That's not empathy. And so I don't have to necessarily know exactly what you're going through to empathize with you. And I don't have to relate to it. Like, I don't have to bring it back to a story that connects because a lot of people do this. Oh, I
Yes.
remember the time when I, no, 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 no.
And that kind of and what I didn't realize is this, I used to do that too, because I thought that that's what you were supposed to do, right? Is
Yes.
to somehow relate to that. And it sometimes diminishes, and
Yes.
often diminishes what the other person is going through.
Yes.
And when you don't understand what someone's going through, I think the best thing to do is to acknowledge, oh, I really have no idea what that's like.
Right.
Is that hard for you? And
Yeah.
honestly, asking, instead of telling them what you think they should do,
Yeah.
asking questions and getting them to think about what it is that they're feeling
Yeah.
lets them then attach to it and own it and actually come up with their own ideas
Yeah.
of what's happening. And like that's something I have been working on, especially with my kids and family and people close with me, because it wasn't something I always did. And I know for me, it's like, okay, well, you're feeling something, you're going through something. Well, what are you feeling? Like, what are you leaning towards? Like, what's going on with you? And I think instead of just, oh, well, I think you should do this, like asking like open ended questions
Yeah.
so that people kind of can just connect to what they're feeling and kind of almost realize what it is that they're thinking
Well, it helps people
as
process.
they're talking to you. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it helps them process. The other
Right.
thing
Thank
is
you. That's
saying,
I'm
yeah,
thinking.
no, you're great. I think the other thing is being completely honest. I can't even imagine what that's like. I can't even imagine what you're going
Right.
through,
Yeah.
right? Can you please explain that to me? I can't even imagine it.
And we've had conversations like that. We've talked about things and we've been good friends since we were kids.
Hmm.
And we both have things still to this day where we're like, wow, like
Yeah,
that's really rough that you're going through that. I don't know what that feels like.
right.
How do
Absolutely.
you feel about that? Like what is that like? Because I just don't know. And I mean, and when we're off of here, those are a lot of the conversations that we do have,
Yeah, totally.
because we're just like, oh, that's not something I've ever really experienced. And it's funny, we do a lot of a lot of the
Yeah.
same similar things and all of that, but we've had very, very different life experiences, and
Mhm.
it's just some things that the other just really hasn't gone through.
But the other thing is, even if we both have gone through it, we process it differently.
Hmm.
Right? We're in different states. We have different families. You have girls, I have boys,
Yeah.
right? I'm a grandma. You're an empty nester right
Yeah.
now.
Well, especially now, I'm
Yeah.
really going to be, because Maddie's
And
out for
yeah.
5 months. She's going to Amsterdam tomorrow.
But I mean, those are things that like even if you've gone through it, when somebody is telling you what they're going through, it is not yours to own.
Yeah.
Right? You just want to be there for them. You want to hold space and empathize with them. And so, that's part of, that's part of that connection and that critical thinking and things like that. And really, just being aware is so important, you know?
Yeah.
So,
We keep getting we're off on like major tangents here. So
yeah,
I'm just gonna kind of throw a few things in because we've touched
sure.
on a lot of this. But it's like, all right, so you talk about collective responsibility.
Mhm.
So let's
Yeah. So collective responsibility means recognizing that our actions, no matter how small, impact the world around us, right?
Mhm.
So whatever we're choosing to do, know that there's other people that are impacted. You are not, you're not on an island all by yourself and doing your own thing, right? It's about taking ownership. We talked about, accountability and responsibility in our past episodes. And so it's about taking ownership and treating the planet and others and ourselves with love, kindness, and respect. And knowing that if we do something, you made the comment of, well, if I do something, the world's not going to implode, right? Or explode or whatever you said.
Mhm.
um, the logistics of that though is our choices, we have to be super mindful of our choices and how we go about things just for the plain fact that we do affect others, you know.
Absolutely.
And so to be aware that you have a responsibility. I always say to people, if you have an opinion, I have an opinion. Your opinion is not more important than my opinion. If you have rights, I have rights. Your rights don't outweigh my rights, right? And so when we go through this society um, thing that we're all living on this big floating rock
Mhm.
together, it's important to know that nobody outweighs anybody else, right? Nobody your well-being is not more important than mine. Mine is not more important than yours. And if I'm doing something that affects your well-being, I have to be responsible and accountable for my actions.
Right.
So,
So I mean, and I think that really ties right into the like your awakened society. Like what,
yes. Yeah. And um I teach people cognitive behavioral therapy. I teach people tapping and things like that, but the logistics are you really should govern yourself. And in governing yourself, if you do the right thing, right? I think we all, I don't care who you are, wrong is wrong. Wrong
Mhm.
is wrong. And so if you lead in suppressing others, if you lead in hating others, if you hate just in general, that's wrong, right? And we need to correct that. We need to change that navigation, that path,
Okay.
and change that way of looking. And so when we're looking at a societal awakening, if we were all to be conscious in everything that we do instead of going into this autopilot
Right.
nonsense where we're like, that's how it's always been, or no, it doesn't affect me, or
Right.
whatever. That's where things get messy.
And I think it's really difficult because so many of us are not taught those things. Like we literally, I think most of the time we end up going through the motions because we're taught to produce, to achieve, and
Hmm.
to like achieve goals, right?
Hmm.
So when that's what you're taught to do and you get stuck and all that, you kind of forget like that, oh, well, yes, it does, someone else is there. Like what I do does affect them because it's just like we're taught achieved. These are the steps that you follow. Like you go from, it's just A to B to C. And there's none of that, those things in between, like how what you're affecting.
But I,
Like, no,
I,
I'm not excusing it. What I'm saying is it just, it's time to start remembering that and to finding those things again
it
because
goes
like
back to the empathy, though, right?
right.
I
And
mean,
again, it's
honestly,
tough if you're not shown that. It makes it kind of,
if you love somebody,
right.
if you lead with love, and
Right.
this is where I get a little passionate about this
I know. I'm
because
playing devil's advocate here because I see this. Like I literally
yes,
see people
I
like just
know.
like where it
And
just does they
my
don't
whole thing is it, once we start making excuses for people doing things that are inappropriate, or things that are desensitized or not sensitive or whatever.
Right.
Once we start making excuses, then we are allowing them to not be accountable for their actions. If you do something wrong, even if it was a mistake, granted, I am human. I do wrong things all the dang time. There is no way, shape, or form I do not do wrong things, right? I am human. But once you recognize, I I have sometimes been in mid-sentence and been like, "Oh, I should I don't even know why I'm saying that. I'm so sorry. I don't know
Mhm.
what came over me in that moment." Right? The fact of the matter is you really need to be accountable for what you do and who you are. That is part of being awake. That is part of being enlightened.
No, I get that. I get
And
that. And I think sadly, like too many people literally have just kind of turned that switch off and are going through the motions. Like it's like
and
we have a very like there are times like it's a very zombie like kind of existence
yes.
where like, you I pick things up and put them down.
Yes. Yeah. But the other thing is we also, as a society, defend bad behavior all the time because, well, that's the way they grew up. That's what they were taught. That's how they are. If you knew them, they didn't mean that,
Right.
right? And it's like that that removes the accountability from the person.
Yeah, which is kind of hysterical because usually I feel like those people who are like excusing someone else's behavior are the same ones who like every time you step like a toe out of line or like you were supposed to do like XYZ and I'm like, well, where's my excuse? They got an excuse. Where's my hall pass? Like,
Yeah.
come
Hence
on now.
hence, let me throw out another book, Atlas of the Heart by Brené Brown. If you wanna understand why you get so frustrated at other
I
people
have
for
to
the
read
things.
that. I actually have it like in my Audible and
Oh
I'm
my
like,
god. It makes you think like, "Dang, that's why I get mad. It has nothing to do with that person. It's all me, dude."
oh, yeah, no, and I know
Dang
that. I
it.
think that's why I'm just still not reading that book. I'm like,
Oh,
I
you
don't know
need
if
to
I'm
read
ready.
it.
I know,
It
yeah, like,
changes everything.
I'm sure, yeah, so, no, it's there. It's, like, all queued up. It's ready to go. We have gone on for, like so I'm gonna ask you for your closing thoughts on this because,
Sure,
we
sure.
this was really a good, passionate, episode for us.
So, the closing thoughts really is if you are choosing to be on an awakening and enlightenment journey, I always suggest that you read, you educate yourself. You don't always put yourself in comfortable situations with like-minded people. Get other people's opinion. Don't get yourself caught up in this echo chamber of the same rhetoric all the time, right? Be able to have these conversations, but be able to have the conversations with emotional intelligence and not let them be emotionally driven. That's super important. So you're responding, not reacting to these conversations. And then know that majority of us are looking for the same goal. We're all looking to be well in our lives. We're all looking to be happy and things like that. So I don't think anybody is out there intentionally trying to do evil things, bad things, but the reality is there are people that just don't hold themselves accountable, right? And I think that's important. So I think we need to have more empathy in the world. We need to lead with love. We need to be compassionate with ourselves and others. And hopefully we can get through this and navigate through what's, out there in the world, and we can really support and hold space for each other and become a better society.
All right, no, that was really great. And then we've got a couple of like great books to check out too. Like if we want to, find out more about some of the things that we were talking about here today. obviously we both care a great deal about this topic. We kind of like went off on several tangents while discussing all of this, but I do think it's huge for a lot of people. And I think a lot of people like, our age, from our generation, just really veering off the path that we were kind of set out on as kids.
Yeah.
So many people I know, like in our age group, were just kind of having all these crazy realizations, like just so far away
Yeah.
from not that they're crazy, it's just so different and so off the path that we were on, like as kids, what we were taught as kids, like how we saw the world
Yeah.
and like kind of, how we're seeing it
But
now.
the other thing is our generation, it is a different world for us. Majority of us, and I can only speak for me, but I know a lot of people like me. Kids live
Yeah.
at home, parents live at home. Like I take care of my mom and my kids are here and my grandkids are here. And so like the logistics of the people our age, we're just like, wait, we were 18 or younger and we were like, bye,
Yeah.
see ya, get out, you do you, you know.
Yeah.
And that wasn't the realm for us.
No, yeah.
Um
Everything is, very
and
drastically changed.
yeah, and being able to navigate that with love and compassion, and it's huge. So yeah, we're all trying to just get
All
along
right.
here.
Yeah. So we will leave you today with love and compassion. Thank you so much for being here with us. And
Yes.
we hope that you come back again. We really love being able to do this and have these conversations. So please write in, ask questions, make statements, share what you're thinking. Let us know what you want to hear about. And we will see you next time.
Yeah. Bye.
Thanks for listening to Friendship, Wellness, and Wisdom. Don't forget to subscribe or follow us wherever you get your podcasts. And follow us on social media for more updates. See you next time.